First, your thoughts on Gregg Wallace and the allegations and this big question, is the BBC in crisis? The MasterChef presenter stepped aside last week after a BBC News investigation revealed a string of allegations against him of inappropriate sexual comments and inappropriate behaviour. The investigation heard from 13 people across a range of ages who worked across 5 different shows, including the broadcaster Kirsty Wark, who appeared on Celebrity MasterChef. The presenter hit back at the allegations over the weekend.
Now, I've been doing MasterChef for 20 years. I think in that time, I have worked with over 4,000 contestants of all different ages, all different backgrounds, all walks of life. Now, in the newspaper, I can see the complaints coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age.
Oh, that has got him even deeper into trouble. But let's wind this back and have a little look at what we are talking about here. So, at the centre of these latest allegations, Gregg Wallace, the presenter of MasterChef, and there he is, likes to take his top off, we know that. And he's now in a kind of gallery of different people, all accused of or guilty of different things. The recent scandals, so Gregg being the latest, then Hugh Edwards, very, very serious criminal activity by Edwards. Then this ruckus over Strictly, which we never really got to the bottom of. Then we have Jermaine Genius, the sports commentator, sacked because he sent sexual messages to young staff. Russell Brand, police involved, still not sure there. And a report due on this really weird DJ called Tim Westwood, and we want to find out about that. So it's difficult, isn't it, to work out what is going on. But there's a pattern here of presenters doing things they should not be doing. And if you're watching this from anywhere, you're thinking, why have they all come out? And I guess the really serious thing to say here is that in the background is this awful, awful silhouette of Jimmy Savile, whose exposure started the ball rolling on misbehaviour, both big and small. So Savile's in the background. Let's look then at Gregg Wallace and what he's alleged to have done and said. It's a lot about inappropriate remarks. Kirsty Wark and 13 accusers telling BBC News, making comments that made everyone feel uncomfortable. Allegations then came out dating back 19 years, sexually harassing one contestant. Kirsty Allsop saying, Gregg said he did a sex act every morning. She didn't want to hear that. Complaint in 2012 then about him touching or being near a producer's bottom and making gestures. Complaint in 2017, same again. Comments, remarks, dirty jokes told out loud. Complaint in 2022, there's a lot here. And the BBC saying, look, you're going to have to complain individually to us. Claims about other shows, that the idea that he went down to a factory and it was making food, and he said that all the people in the factory and on the staff of his programme were fat. Complaints that, it's all filthy jokes and it's taking his top off and it's dancing with only a sock on. And let's have a look here at something that did actually appear on the air.
I find it quite pleasant. Left to my own devices, I'd probably munch the living daylights out of your little tart. Very, very nice.
Excuse me?
I think you're giggling because you're happy.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what to make of it. What do you make of it, Angela?
I find the whole thing really, really uncomfortable. I think that where you have power and you have a following and you have profile, there is so much scope for exploitation. For every decent person who is in this situation in the television industry, who does their job well, who is responsible, there will be those who possibly, as allegedly has happened here, just seems to think that they are, no pun intended, untouchable.
What, sexualised language, Jovan, is that?
Untouchable.
Yeah, I think it's pretty grim and obviously...
But it was only when I was on the air, no one complained at the time.
I mean, it's just... I wonder what's wrong with these rather, as you said, strange, powerful men who have some types of following. It's just obviously very unpleasant, unacceptable. And I think at least we're in an environment now where people can speak up and speak out against these things. And that's something that should be celebrated and encouraged a lot more, where people feel as though they have been in receipt of some of this type of activity. But yeah, it's not pleasant at all.
See, obviously what he's done is It's a string of, I'm not saying minor incidents, but there's no single cataclysmic thing. There's a lot of very edgy, even dirty comments, dirty jokes, etc. He has been doing it for a very long time.
And I think that's the issue. I am all for banter. I'm terrible at terrible puns and double entendres, and I know it sounds very sexist, but especially when you are the man in that power situation, you've got a younger woman there, it becomes incredibly uncomfortable. If we saw that clip in isolation and we didn't know everything else that we knew, we could say he was just pushing the envelope there. He's being a bit pantomime.
Bit suggestive, yeah.
A bit suggestive, being a bit silly, bit naughty. You know, the word tart is freighted with all those different connotations. It's just vaudeville stuff. But the fact it comes with all those things, and the fact, as you rightly say, there is the wall of shame that you just showed us, you just demonstrated, suggests what is going on at the BBC.
Well,
what is going on at the BBC?
Whether this is actually another BBC problem with a capital P. Stephen in Essex, do you think this shows that something's going very badly wrong at the BBC?
Well, this is debatable, but what I can't understand is that women cherry pick. They cherry pick to destroy certain men. And the biggest thing I cannot understand is, it makes me angry, that women have put in power Donald Trump, and he's probably one of the biggest people. I'm not going to say what he's been accused of. We all know what he's been accused of. Women cherry pick. They're bringing down men because they don't like them. I was in the high street one day running in Brentwood. I got smacked on the bum by Fatima Whitbread. I didn't. She's a lovely lady. I didn't take offence of it. It was a friendly gesture. What the hell is going on?
I was not expecting you to suddenly come out with that. Fatima Whitbread smacked you on the bum as a friendly gesture. Now we'll have to get Fatima Whitbread's response.
If you don't like
somebody
someone,
who looked like Fatima.
It was Fatima Whitbread.
Okay, it was. Okay, you've closed my exit route there. All right, Stephen, thank you for that. Well, yes, it's. So one of the stories came out the weekend. It was a woman I know called Asma Mir, and said, and I think I could probably repeat what she said because it's been widely published, that he had said, "I like that friend of yours at the BBC. She's a sexy," that word that begins with B. That's a tasteless way of describing women. And she then obviously thought, that's really dodgy. And she wrote a letter, and the letter just sat in a drawer.
So there's two things going on here. There's, first of all, there's the sheer number of warnings and complaints. Each one in itself, as you rightly say, are regrettable. But if they all point to a pattern of behaviour, and I think, look, the previous...
Stephen's point is that a group of women have decided to take this guy down.
So I was coming to... So this was my second point.
In the call of the year, may I say.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think the randomness of a sporting legend walking down the high street...
He's been slapped on the bum by Fatima Whitbread. It probably wasn't Fatima.
Yeah, I'm sure not, and I'm sure she will tell us otherwise. But the fact is that... Look, there is an element of cherry-picking sometimes when women complain and they do throw the baby out with the bathwater. I can say this is the so-called middle-aged, am I middle class, I don't know, woman that he has taken a pop at, when actually that's the very demographic, going by my friends and the people I know who actually like MasterChef. Those are the people. So he's biting the hand that feeds him in that respect. But yeah, sometimes I think there is a culture now where we take offence too readily at a lot of stuff. But on this occasion, I think there is a dossier that has to at least be investigated.
Well, we haven't even got into his thing where he says it's middle-class, posh middle-class ladies who are taking him down, because that takes us into class war, doesn't it,
Well,
Jovan?
This is it. I mean, firstly, the comments are just... I didn't know what to say when I heard them, to be honest. But also, I mean... This isn't an issue that only affects middle-class women, as he pointed out.
Well, he's of a certain age. He is the age that he is. I mean, I don't know why, of a certain age. I don't know, it's just a bit of a weird defence, but I guess he's lashing out a bit.
And he's got a chip, obviously.
He has got a chip.
Because of his background, and he's boy made good, and he just thinks there are silly women that sit around, having their hair blown and have nothing better to do than make silly comments about him. Have
a look at these headlines before we go to our break. So there we are. His comments have not helped him, I think it's fair to say. Disaster chef.
Brilliant.
Shut your cake hole, Greg
Brilliant.
is the son. The Mail says that BBC were warned, and the Star gives him advice, stop digging. After the break, more calls. Is the BBC in crisis following these Gregg Wallace allegations? Just because there are so many over so long, and then you think, well, hang on, why was nothing done? 0207 862 2222. We'll see you shortly. Now, more of your calls on the Gregg Wallace allegations. Have they left the BBC in crisis? Steve was saying he thinks they're... Steve, actually, our viewer was saying he agrees with Greg. It's a group of women trying to bring him down. Yvonne in Derbyshire, hi.
Good morning, Jeremy.
What do you make of it all?
There.
Thank you.
Quite frankly, I think if the BBC do not get rid of him, they will lose their credibility.
I think he's probably not going to... I suspect he won't broadcast again on the BBC or indeed probably anywhere. But you don't think they've waited too long?
I think they are. And they're in danger because of other programmes and other products that they sell are not displaying respectful behaviour to everybody. And that is important to the integrity and credibility of the BBC.
What are you thinking of specifically there, Yvonne?
Well, you've mentioned some on your programme this morning.
Yes, OK.
But respect of everybody, no matter sex, gender, age, race. Okay. It's got to be respectful behaviour.
OK, Yvonne, thank you. Very sound. Thank you. Peter in Wolverhampton, hi.
Hi, Jeremy.
What do you think of this? This guy saying, Gregg Wallace saying it's a bunch of middle-class women of a certain age who are ganging up on him.
Yeah, I agree with him. I think he's just a working-class bloke with a bawdy sense of humour, and this is all a storm in a teacup.
He certainly has made a habit of telling sexual jokes for a long time. I didn't have any knowledge of it. I've not really had to spend any time with it. But it may just be that it's like the offside rule changing, that things you could do 20 years ago, you cannot do now, Peter.
Yeah, but if you go down any pub, you'll hear this kind of stuff every night in a pub, and he's just an ordinary bloke with a sexy sense of humour, and I think he's fine. He's a working-class hero, actually.
Jovan, can you answer that, Jovan? Because that's the other side of this.
I mean...
Tell Peter.
Yeah, I mean, Peter, I just don't think that is the case. Yes, you may hear it down the pub. It doesn't really make it acceptable, though, does it? We need to create a bit of an environment where people can speak out against these issues, where women feel confident coming forward to discuss these types of matters. And I think the BBC have left it a bit too late. I don't think it's anything vindictive. I think they're displaying their experiences, and it's time for action on these issues.
Peter?
No, this is a witch hunt. He's basically just an ordinary bloke with a funny sense of humour, and it's a bit risky, and that's all there is to it. OK.
I suppose the argument for Peter, Jovan, is that if you decide to completely cancel all these things and stop them happening, they will come out somehow, and they come out through Andrew Tate. So you end up with somebody who's a complete outsider who sort of aggregates all the offensive material and becomes that person, and they will always exist.
Exactly, and it is awful.
But then why not let Gregg Wallace tell some dirty jokes?
Well, I think we have to stem it at every time it kind of occurs.
Okay.
When you see these kind of sexist comments, misogynistic comments, they're not acceptable, are they? Whether it's Andrew Tate, whether it's Gregg Wallace, whether it's down the pub, they all kind of have to be condemned, and we have to create that kind of culture and environment where women don't feel intimidated in the workplace.
Well, I think there is potentially a broader point being missed here, that the BBC, and I say this with great regret, I was brought up on the BBC. When the BBC is good, it's absolutely brilliant. You can't beat Jez's Radio 2 show. But in all seriousness, things like that, absolutely fantastic. Dramas they do, brilliant. There's parts of the BBC which are wonderful. This is our state-sponsored broadcaster. We invest in this and we pay for this. Because there is no competition in terms of that. Without competition, you lose quality. We've had Lineker shouting his head off about what he wants to say. We've had Hugh Edwards, who was paid after his arrest. We've had all the examples that you've had. We've had BBC Verify. Look at the politicisation, the impartiality. BBC Verify has been been questioned about its ability to be impartial. Accusations in the paper the other day of anti-Semitism being routine at the BBC. It was in the Telegraph and it's been in the other papers now. Whistleblowers at the BBC who work there, and I know people who work at the BBC who've experienced anti-Semitism, the so-called left-wing bias, the unfair reporting of Brexit. There are so many things in which our national broadcaster is failing in the responsibilities of its charter to educate, to entertain in an impartial way without fear or favour, whatever the words of the charter are. It's not doing it.
Understood. Diane in Torfan, hello.
Hello, Jeremy. Hello, panel.
What do you think of what Angela just said, Diane?
Yes, I don't, the BBC, yes, they are, I don't get at them. I think he's innocent and proven guilty, but I don't agree with Peter because we are, he made a comment that we was, middle-aged women. Yeah, we're middle-aged women for a reason because we've seen life. We've seen the dirty old men in the beginning when we were young people. We've seen it all and we were so innocent of it all, but now we get older. We know the score.
I would not take on middle-aged women in this country. The idea that you criticise people for being middle-aged,
we've lived our life and we know these things.
The most powerful group in the country. Diane, thank you. Jane in Somerset, hi.
Hiya.
What do we make of this wretched situation?
The thing is, okay, there's a load of hoo-ha and everything. He said this, he said that. These people exist. We're going to come across them, and we have to do something about it. The BBC is his employer, and these people that he's being rude to and he's telling these jokes to and offending are going to work. Most of them, anyway, they're going to work. So they deserve to be treated with respect. Well, respect has been mentioned, but I think there are laws, aren't there, that say how you can treat an employer.
Yeah, it's mainly contestants, but you raise a very good point that the treatment of young women in the TV industry by older men who are experienced and, presenters like Gregg Wallace or executives is ongoing concern everywhere. Of course it is.
It's all about power. I once had my makeup done by one of the makeup team at, it was actually to the side, it was on ITV, but she'd worked for the BBC years ago, and a very well-known person gave her a lift home and just pulled into a lay-by and, made all sorts of suggestions. And she said, no, I just wanted a lift home. As it happens, it was fine. But it was the presumption that because they were a star, they thought they could behave like that. And you get that right across different industries as well. The specific thing here is, the question we're asking is the BBC in crisis. Why is this happening in something that we are paying for?
Ruth in North Yorkshire, hi. Is the BBC in crisis?
Hello.
Hello.
I don't think they're particularly in crisis. They've lost their way a bit and they're behind the times and and all sorts of problems and everything. But as far as Gregg Wallace goes, I have to say, I'm absolutely appalled that people would use the same name as Jimmy Savile in the same breath, because this is not the same. It's not even on a parallel at all.
Yeah. No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean,
the Savile scandal was something that made people think, wait a minute, there are some presenters who are misusing their positions. No more than that.
Of course. Yeah. But the thing is, I'm not a fan of the man, far from it. He's very brash. But I actually feel slightly sorry for him, because all these people have come out of the woodwork. And I mean, Kirsty Wark is an educated professional woman. Why she's upset about this, I don't know. Why didn't she just tell him off at the time or something, or tell him to leave?
Okay, Ruth, I'm only cutting you off. I feel terrible about it, because at 10 o'clock we have to go to our ad break. So forgive me. So nothing sinister. Thank you for your calls on this. Later we'll be asking.